cannot trust these people. You cannot trust Atiku. You cannot trust Erufai. You have to be very careful of being recorded in meetings, recorded in whatever negotiation you are making behind closed doors. You have to make sure it aligns with whatever you say publicly. So you cannot come out publicly to say one thing and then go behind closed doors and agree to something that is in opposition to your principle as Peter Obi.
The opposition coalition has formally adopted the African Democratic Congress as its platform for the 2027 general elections. Now, this development follows a strategic meeting in Abuja where key opposition figures, including former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, Labour Party's presidential candidate in 2023, that's Peter Obi, agreed to unite behind the ADC to challenge President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
So like I said, there are good news and there are bad news to this. But first of all, I'll start with the bad news. But what I can tell you is that very soon the squabbles, the internal squabbles will start. Just like a normal Nigerian political party, the internal squabbles will start. And then that's a big problem. There will be internal leadership contests. There will be internal squabbles. All those things will start happening. That's number one. Bad news, negative. And also, I also believe that it's a no-no for Peter Obi to be vice president to anyone. I think he already said it, that he's not planning to be vice president to anyone. I hope that remains the case. So, as long as there's no internal squabbles, the internal leadership politics did not start, then we might convert this negative to positive. By the way, for conflict of interest, I'm a Peter Obi advocate. I've always been Peter Obi's supporter, and I believe he's the right man to lead Nigeria. So, that aside, the second negative to this coalition is the perception of politics as usual. Of course, ADC is not a new political party. ADC was formed in 2005. So it's not a new political party. You have Atiku there in your corner. Atiku is someone that I don't really consider as someone that is upright. You know, someone that has been involved in several corruptions in Nigeria. So this perception of politics as usual is what I'm worried about, right? Because the youths that rallied behind Obi rallied behind him because they see him as someone that is very straightforward, someone that doesn't like corruption, someone that is very modest, someone that looks after the interests of the people. So this negative or the perception, because I don't know what will happen, but I'm just saying there is that perception of politics as usual because of the individuals involved. Because, you know, what I would prefer is clean slate. I want a new political party, no involvement of anyone else but Peter Obi. By the way, I just wanted to make this clear, right? I just want to make this clear, by the way. Peter Obi do not need Atiku and all those people to win an election. All he needs is a just system, a system that election will not be rigged. That's it. And, you know, you might say I'm biased, but I believe Peter Obi won the last election in a landslide. It was not even close. They have to make sure that this is not politics as usual. They all subscribe to the same goal. And that goal has to be to help the masses, to alleviate poverty in Nigeria, good governance, and then, separating politics and religion and every other aspect of governance. That's very key. If they can change this, we can move this negative to positive. Peter Obi might risk his voice being drowned in this political concoction, right? You know why I love Peter Obi? Peter Obi is not streetwise. Peter Obi is not cut out for Nigerian politics. Peter Obi cannot do whatever it takes to win. Do you know what I mean? And I believe this is a good thing, but this can also be a bad thing with regards to Nigerian politics. Nigerian politics, for you to succeed in Nigerian politics, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. Now, am I subscribing to that notion that you have to do whatever it takes to win? No. But you still have to have some level of street smart. You see, need to know that you cannot trust these people. You cannot trust Atiku, you cannot trust Erufai. You have to be very careful of being recorded in meetings, recorded in whatever negotiation you are making behind closed doors. You have to make sure it aligns with whatever you say publicly. So he cannot come out publicly to say one thing and then go behind closed doors and agree to something that is in opposition to your principle as Peter Obi. This is very, very important. Another bad news is the idea of expectation. Now, Peter Obi will need to manage this expectation. Of course, if he becomes the candidate for this coalition, the chosen candidate for this coalition, which I think is the direction this is going. So if he becomes the chosen candidate for this coalition, then he has to curtail expectation. He has to be very careful what he agrees to, because he needs to govern as Peter Obi, right? He shouldn't govern as ADC coalition candidate. He should govern as Peter Obi. That means there is no side dealing, there is no quota, appointment quotas. Maybe Atiku will have 30% of the appointment, Erufai will have 30% of the appointment, and this person will have 20% of the appointment. If Peter Obi agrees to that, if he adopts that mindset or that political culture, then the whole idea of solving Nigeria's problem becomes redundant. Because this is not the idea of Peter Obi that we know. Peter Obi is one that couldn't even give contract to his brother when he was a governor. So if he reverts back to the Atiku politics or the Erufai politics, then the whole coalition will be redundant. Certainly from obedience point of view. So he has to be very wary of that. And also the idea that he wants to stay for 4 years. Of course, things can be done in 4 years, but ideally, you want a president that will be there for 8 years so that he can make lasting change. You don't want to make any change that someone else will come in within 4 years and dismantle it. Right? Governance or governing a country like Nigeria is a slow-moving trend. Yes, you can achieve a lot within 2 years, within 4 years. Yes, but what we're looking at is to have a lasting change in the country and not just a change that someone can dismantle within 4 years. But, I'd rather have Peter Obi for 4 years than not have Peter Obi at all. So now, let's talk about the good news. For any of these good news that I'm going to talk about to work, there has to be electoral reform, real electoral reform. I know there has been electoral reform, but there has to be real electoral reform in the sense that if the IREV is not working, if the machines, if the equipment is not working, the election becomes null and void. That's it. There's no the idea of on the election day, INEC chairman will say, "Oh, sorry, the machines are not working, so we have to sort of count this behind closed doors and let you know later on." That's not gonna work. So if INEC can still be bought, if INEC still have the capacity to rig the election, then whatever coalition you have is redundant. That's not going to make sense. So I want to make that very clear. So all things being equal, meaning the institution in place to oversee the election has to be upright for this coalition to work. That's plain and simple. So one of the positive is that, of course, this coalition will give Peter Obi expansion of his political base. Yes. But, I sideline a bit and say, most people will say, oh, you need Atiku so that you can have some voters from the north. That's a flawed argument because Peter Obi won enough votes in the north to win the last election. Right? But, of course, you can never say no to additional broadening of your political base. Yeah, of course, sure. So that's a good thing. On that note, that's a good thing. Right? So this platform, this coalition will give him an opportunity to broaden his political base.